God, what a terrible dismount.
Yeah. Woo. Ooh. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas curious fan. Welcome to episode 282 of Third Degree, the podcast. First off, he is your favorite, everybody's favorite. It is Dan Crooke. Howdy, Dan.
Hello. How's it going?
You're way too chipper, Dan. That scares me. And your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, editor, founder of thirddegree.net, which, by the way, just celebrated its own birthday, and the original soccer influencer, Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Peter, man, I am super excited for the game at San Jose this weekend. See if Dallas can get this thing over the line, get into the playoffs. It's going to be fun.
Oh, Buzz. Buzz.
What?
Dan, I think it's happened.
It's happened. He's broken.
I think the early onset has happened to Buzz. He's now hallucinating.
Buzz, who does FC Dallas play at the weekend?
Is it not San Jose?
That was Wednesday.
Oh, that game already happened.
It did. It's easy to forget, though. It was terrible.
I must have blocked it out. When I was up at 2 a.m. trying to record my 3 things, I was like, why am I even doing this? But I did it. Thought of things to talk about.
So I've been thinking about this through most of the day. First off, I'm just going to be honest with all of you that I've had a pretty bad day, and I'm in a grumpy mood. Some of it is work related. Some of it is family stuff going on. Some of it is the fact that any of the sporting teams that I love and near and dear to my heart suck. And then on top of all of this is the fact that all of this crazy stuff happening with the burn, it just feels like it's a never ending drip of like, really, seriously, that too?
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this at the start because there's a lot of I really want to try to make an effort not to pile on. Okay. Because it's very easy just to go completely scorched earth and crap on everything and live up to my own personal reputation as the Dallas cloud of darkness. All right. So
yeah.
I'm going to make a concerted effort not to be that person. But
all right, fair.
Later this afternoon, I saw a tweet from Charlie Helms. Now, I don't know if everybody listening to this knows who Charlie is or her significance to this club, but I'm willing to bet that Charlie is probably the longest continuous season ticket holder in this entire club's history. She is an original fan. She's probably fan number 2 after Dustin. She was in the original Inferno supporters group, and she, without question, has been the singularly most supportive, never negative, never says never says anything wrong about this club, even in its worst mistakes. And today she tweeted out that because she is living on a fixed income, the price increase will prevent her from being able to buy her season ticket next year. And that absolutely broke my heart.
Yeah, she's been around forever. She's ubiquitous at FC Dallas games. I think you're right. She's been following us since we started. I mean, certainly really early on. She's been at every event you could ever imagine. So it is pretty crushing. You're right. There may not be a person that's been a season ticket longer older than her since she's done it from the very beginning.
I mean, Dustin moved away. Now, Dustin kept his season tickets for a while. I don't think he still has them.
No, he hasn't, but that's fair. I mean, he lives in Colorado. So
right.
It's understandable that he has made his tickets. And there may be other people that are 96ers as well. But I doubt there's a 96er that's been as ubiquitous in their support and has been universally at everything you can imagine. Home games, away games aside. So it is a tragedy, and I feel bad about it. And it's the kind of fan that I wish the club could do something for her, but or maybe some other fans will. But who knows what it'll be? But I'm with you, Peter. It was a bummer to see that.
It would go a long way to repairing a lot if I found out that Dan Hunt singularly just said, you know what, Charlie, we're going to take care of you. I don't know if that'll happen. And I know doing that, and look, and to be fair to Dan, if he was to do that, that would open a can of worms that maybe just politically and otherwise, maybe business wise, is a bigger can of worms than I realize. And I'm speaking out of my butt.
It's tough because if they do the one, then where do you draw the line?
Well,
right, all of a sudden there's somebody else that needs a problem.
The gap between Charlie and everybody else
I'm with you.
is massive.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, look, on top of everything else that has gone wrong in the last 24 hours of this club, and then to top off the season ticket holder email that was released at about 5:30 this evening, which ostensibly tells everybody, hey, go here to find out what your ticket fate is. Here's the definitive word. And then all of that and the confusion that comes with all of those new web pages that they've asked everybody to go read. I don't know. It's been a really, really rough day as a fan of this club.
Yeah. Those link pages are a little bit fog of war in the sense that, like, it's kind of, the information is a little bit scattered, but I tried to read through it really quickly. And I think a lot of that information is good information. Whether you like it or not is a different question, but it's all good information. And I believe I did not find anything that we were not, if we talked about it, I think we were correct in everything we've talked about. There's some things in there that we didn't know about, or that nobody knew about, or that people are learning now a couple of weeks after the announcement of all this new ticket pricing and stuff. But if you really want to, if you don't necessarily take all these other people's words for that, go there. If you're a fan, you can go find it. I'm sure it's on FC Dallas' website, or look at your email for that ticket rep, and get the answers you need for the various people.
I think they've definitely got a point about misinformation, because when we first talked about the price increases, I grabbed the 2024 price as 2025, and there was, there is a 50% price increase in places. There's also, in the supporters section, it's 1%. In some other sections, it's 10%. Kind of digestible numbers. But you also have people on social media who are on the east side where it's cheaper tickets, and they've had a price locked in for a couple of years, and they're like, wow, now this is going to more than double my price, which it is. But that's not the same as saying it's a 100% price increase.
The people with the renewal bonuses that have gotten, renewal discounts.
Okay, guys, can I just ask the most obvious question in the world?
Sure.
Which is, where was all this information the day they announced the stadium reconstruction? Why is this coming out, 2 or 3 weeks after the fact? And and I think because of how it is worded in the email by what's his face that runs ticket sales, that it's because there's all this misinformation out there, and now they feel like they need to put out the information to set the record straight. And I'm like, dude, where was this stuff? Literally the minute this should have been up on a website and in everybody's hands the second that announcement was made.
Well, I imagine, and I'm not saying they're correct, I imagine they felt like that they could just contact each person and say, here's your information. And obviously people began to speculate, and people began to talk about their individual cases. And then word of mouth got around that one person had this, another person had that. Yeah. Create, again, like I described it, it's obviously not war, but the fog of war is a good expression. Like, there's a lot of things floating around. And so they obviously have reacted to that, or maybe they didn't. Maybe this was already in the works and it just took time for whatever reason. We're not on the inside of the organization, but in the end of the day, if you have questions, I think there's now a place where you can go get some answers, whether it's clear answers or not is a different question, because it is a little bit like multiple different pages and that kind of thing, but I think it's all in there.
Well, I because I've read through it once. I got 1,000 questions that come out of it, but because to use your term, fog of war, I'm not going to dig. I don't want to dig into the specifics of what they posted on the website. What I would say is that part of the reason why they are dealing with all this misinformation is because they didn't put this stuff up to begin with. And even if they had posted it from the beginning, there would still be disinformation because that's just how the world works.
Yes, what with the internet,
right? But they would have done themselves a massive favor if all of this had been done the minute that all of these announcements went out. And I'm sure there are people inside the club or whatever lurker in your Discord, F you, by the way, is listening to this and reading this. You know, they're like, well, we were, but this, and I'm not, there's always going to be an excuse. But they're dealing with all this now because somebody or somebodies or something caused this kind of failure of information. And the problem for them, Buzz, is that if you read through the stuff, this is going to be an incredibly painful process for the next 3 seasons.
Yeah, it's very complicated. I mean, I was getting into the part where it talks about the season where they're going to flip sides, and you mentioned the part about like how even this year how the people that are on one side are going to be in their normal seats, and everyone that's going to be coming across is going to get to pick in this order and whatnot and the other stuff. And, you know, listen, it's going to be a difficult process for everybody. They will get difficult for construction trying to build while they're using it for games, get difficult for game ops, get difficult for ticket sales guys, difficult for the fans. It's not going to be easy. You know, it's going to be a tough 3 years, but you know, let's hope and cross our fingers on the other side that it's going to be worth it with a beautiful new stadium, basically a new stadium, might as well be a new stadium. You know, and they're going to have to work really hard. And I imagine we'll be dealing with this in a lot of ways for the next 3 seasons. They're going to have to work really hard to try and mitigate it for their fans because, you know, I would assume that part of the reason that they're putting out documentation like this is they have gotten a somewhat negative response from some people or from groups of people or large swaths of people that are confused and upset and not responding as they had perhaps hoped. So they're going to have a PR and community relations battle for the next 3 seasons, honestly, to get through this thing. Because even from the get-go, Peter, you talked about how crazy it's going to be in the neighborhood around the stadium as well. And they don't even have control over that. Then you get involved with city and county and the local businesses, and it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I have my issues with the Hunts, but they've been doing this kind of thing for an incredibly long amount of time. And I would trust that they knew once they made the decision to go ahead and continue to play games in the stadium while it was under constructed for 3 entire seasons, that they knew what was about to come down the hill and were prepared for that. And it just feels, at least in these initial few weeks, that it's almost as if they didn't expect this to happen. And I find that almost unbelievable, which means it probably isn't true. And maybe I'm overreacting to it. Related to that comment, somebody well-connected contacted me and said, hey, I heard you ask the question about why they are playing in the stadium and why they didn't go play at the Star in Frisco. And the answer to that question was probably obvious from the jump, is its sponsorship issues. So FC Dallas stadium sponsor is Toyota. The stadium sponsor at the Star is Ford. The soft drink of choice for FC Dallas is Coke. Jerry Jones, it's Pepsi. And what I've been told is that the idea of playing somewhere else was bantied about initially, but I think it became a very quick non-starter when every stadium in the area, minus the Cotton Bowl, has sponsorship conflicts. So
and 3 years of conflicts. Yeah,
and 3 years of conflicts.
That'd be a big money.
And contracts are contracts, and relationships are relationships, and money is money, and so I if I'd thought about it and had a better, if I was smarter, I probably would have realized that on my own and didn't need somebody to tell me. But that totally makes sense.
Well, to be fair, we're not front office operations people, so that it would have been hard for any of us to think about that. But it does make a lot more sense than just like, it didn't work. That's why it doesn't work.
All right. Well, that's all the ticket stuff. We have a ton. You know what? Ironically, because of what happened last night, in San Jose, Buzz, that you've blocked out.
What?
We have an entire offseason, and in fact, an extended offseason now of an additional 3 weeks where we can get into ticket and stadium renovations because the rest of the season is absolutely meaningless. As Dallas goes to last place San Jose, the wooden spoon team in MLS, a team that had only won 3 times at home and was playing a rotated roster, and still somehow managed to lose 3-2.
Yeah, I read that quote from me and Russell. He's like, "Yeah, we rotated a lot of people." I was like, "Oh no, that makes it even worse." Yeah, this was not a quality win or even a quality loss. This was one of those weird games where, in a modern context, we've all learned that possession doesn't really mean very much. Dallas had almost 60% of possession, boatless possession. They ended up creating a large amount for them of shots on the road, which is 17. But the same old thing rears its head where they only get 5 of them on net, which is a rate of about 29%. Depending on which stat group you looked at, I saw one said 4, one said 5, so it depends on which website. But the MLS one said 5, so we'll go with that. 29% on target. That's not quality enough, particularly because they had a really high percentage of their shots. I think it was 60-something% came inside the box. So with that in close work, you ought to be able to get more of them on net. So the bottom line is it just wasn't efficient enough of goal creation. They did get enough goal creation, but the larger macro problem is that, we've talked about this for a while now, as Coach Peter Luxon has sacrificed defense for offense. It's a more balanced game, but that means he gives up 2-3 goals a game all the time. So that's not how you win games. And the defense had its problems against a really, really bad team who's admittedly added some pieces, but not a very good performance by any stretch of imagination. And when you go into the team that only has, I think, 3 wins at home out of their 5, and you can't beat them. One of the teams that's competing for one of the worst teams in the history of the league, and you're in a must-win situation. You can't go in there and get a win, then you don't deserve to be in the playoffs. That's the bottom line.
So, Dan, do you want to throw anything on top of that real quick before we get into the specifics?
Do you want me to sling more shit on a pile of shit?
If you'd like to, I'm giving you the opportunity. You don't have to.
Nah, it's not worth kicking someone when they're down.
All right. Buzz, I want to get back to that point you just made in a second, but one of the things that I think surprised people was the fact that Martin Paz did not play in the game. Maurer started, and you asked some questions about whether or not maybe Martin would have made a difference in this particular game.
Yeah.
And I also want to throw a little bit of the elephant in the room, which is I was a bit surprised when you threw out the question as to what's really going on here. He was out injured, but he does have a call-up to Indonesia on the way. And I think you kind of went out there on a limb and kind of questioned the thinking behind that. And I'm just wanting to kind of clear that up.
Well, let's first give some official credit. Garrett Melser, who works as digital media guy for the team, says that he did indeed hurt his wrist earlier in the week in training. Was listed as questionable. So I don't doubt that. My question in general terms was, if he starts that game over Jimmy Maurer, does Dallas win? Maurer saved only 1 of 4 shots that faced him. And I don't know that I looked at each goal. I don't know that I looked at them and thought Maurer made any critical mistakes, but there's no question that Martin Paz is a better goalie than Jimmy Maurer. So, would he have gotten a couple of them, and could they have won that game? I think it's a legitimate question. There's no way to know, but certainly the defense would feel more confident. They might play better. He might have gotten 1 or 2 of those saved. But being a jaded cynic who's been around this game a long time, I've seen people do some nefarious ass shit before. And I'm not going to say this is a red flag. I'm just going to say that I noted this, that you remember the last time he got called up, we questioned whether he went all in on a couple of tackles, that maybe he subconsciously even perhaps pulled out of a couple of hits that he might have made ordinarily on guys that ended up being goals. And then this situation comes up where he hurts his wrist, and I don't doubt that it's hurt. I don't doubt that. When the team says it's hurt, I believe it, because I don't think they wouldn't do the team would not do this. But I couldn't help but wonder, like, if this would have been MLS Cup, would he have taped that up and played? Like, so
well,
I just
or if he
have
didn't,
that.
or how about this?
Yeah.
Being that it was kind of a must-win for the team, if he didn't have the call-up, would he have taped it up?
Would he have taped it up and play?
Yeah.
I don't begrudge the guy to be worried about his call-up, given the amount of massive impact that's having for him personally. I don't question his commitment to the team officially. I'm not questioning that. All I did was say, okay, I'm noting this. If this continues to be a thing, then we're going to have to talk about it. It's like, it's just, it's now 2 occasions where 5 days before the call up, I went, huh? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not, and he probably will be mad at me for saying all that, but you can remember when, not to make a completely unfair comparison, you remember when Giassi was hurt, and when Giassi got hurt and flopped down, and I asked, I think it was Lucci, about it like 2 days later, and he goes, man, he looked fine walking off at halftime, and he's in training here today on Monday. He looks great. I don't, so we've seen worse. Certainly.
Yeah, no, I understand why you're jaded about it, and I want to be wrong.
I
look, I think he's one of the coolest, best signings this club has ever made, in my
opinion.
And the fact that he has been willing to kind of buy into and live the Dallas lifestyle and buy into the sports scene. Hell, he wore a Dallas Trinity shirt before the game the other day, in the in the whatever the fit check is, the photos that they post. And I just thought that was really, really cool. And I get where you're coming from. It would absolutely break my heart to find out that there was something to it. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I see where you're coming from.
He earns the benefit of the doubt, and I'm not making any accusations. I'm just an observer of this team. And when I notice things that are different, I note them. And so I've noticed that there's been a slight difference now twice. Now, it may be 100% real. I hope it's 100% real. I hope I'm wrong.
Well, I'm also going to throw out there, he's clearly by a large mile the MVP of this team, because without him, they probably are the wooden spoon team.
Oh, you think so?
Oh, yes. How many times has he absolutely saved this team's bacon this season?
I mean, a lot, but I mean, you could go the other way too with Musa and 15 goals. I mean, it's he definitely is up there.
It took Musa a little while to get going, and Martin was playing well from the jump. So I mean, I guess maybe it's not as big a difference between him and Musa, but I just
it's huge. Yeah,
I just think that. I think Martin is MVP for the season, but we'll talk about that probably on a
in the season.
Episode.
We'll get into that. Yeah,
right. Okay, so my next question about it is so how does this happen? How does Dallas, in a must-win game, go to San Jose, a team that is absolute crap, playing their B team and all the other things that you just talked about? How do they lose this game? What went wrong?
Well, some defense went wrong, as it does when you are trying to be really offensive.
It wasn't the lineup. It does how he lined the team up.
No,
create problems from you from the start. Was there anything weird about that?
No, because Nkosi Tafari came back at right center back and Ibiaga went into the middle. I mean, there's some big picture things, but not in terms of his individual selection. Iramondi was back off suspension. That was good. By the way, it might have been Iramondi's worst game of the year. Sho Kafumana was back. He had a really good game, in fact. Juan was there. Areola was there. You had your big three up front. I was slightly concerned that, is Velasco in his recovery mode ready for a midweek game? I would have gone with Farrington, but they went with Velasco, and he was my man of the match. So he obviously didn't care what I thought, obviously. So, it was a must win. And so, other than pause, he really went with what is become clearly his best 11 in his mind. And I don't have any disagreements with any of that. Like the only other player that's been playing really well that you could make a case for might have been Sebastian Lletget, who might have deserved to be out there. But, over the course of the year, he's been one of your best players all the time. And Sho Kafumana has been really good and is more of the defensive minded player that you probably need in that spot. So, no complaints about the lineup. Actually, it just was a case of what plagues this team defensively more often than not is an individual error that leads to a goal. And those were the same kind of things that happened. On the first goal, they just gave that guy way too much space and didn't close and backed off of him instead. Hernan Lopez. And the second goal, Ibeagha smashes into Kafamana, knocks him down, and the guy's in on goal again. The third goal was Dallas getting up trying to get a goal, and they just were, left shorthanded. So, Abobasi managed to get the third one. So it's not really Dallas just didn't give themselves enough real chances to get goals. Only 5 shots on target. Their only goal came off of Ibeagha's header off a corner. Velasco. Yeah. Velasco's really nice shot, which is a very nice team play. So, when you score 2 goals on the road, you'd like to think you have a pretty good chance to win, but the defense didn't hold up. So they lose.
Dan, once again, I'm going to turn to you and see if you'd like to throw any additional commentary or observations.
Jesus. No, I mean, they had the chances to win that game just like they had the chances to win at the weekend. And no.
So I have found it a bit interesting that the Peter Luxon bandwagon appears to have emptied out alarmingly quick.
Yeah, rather rapidly.
Over the course of the last few days. And fans are fickle that way. And I guess it does lead me to ask this question, which is, where do they go from here on a managerial hire? Because I obviously I'm one of these people that it was like, yeah, this is not the right guy. He's clearly not experienced enough to do this job. And I'm going to point out that I think this all proves that is the correct way of looking at it. But I also was willing to admit that all signs were indicating that this was the easiest path for Dan Hunt to hire a guy that people would generally like. And now I think, there'd be a lot of bitching and complaining if they do end up hiring him. So now I'm confused. Like, what do they do from here?
Well, I think, he's now got a 7-7-2 record in MLS play and 7-10-2 in all comps. Well, that's slightly better than Nico, probably actually a step better than Nico Stevez had. It's still not great. It's not above 5. It's right at 500. And if he's the coach for the whole season, they're probably above the line. But, again, he wouldn't have had Velasco like he does at the end here, and he wouldn't have had Paxton the whole time. And, so things would be different. So it's hard to really make that comparison. Under Luxon, they were before this game averaging 2.1 goals a game, and that may have dropped, closer to 2, and they were allowing 1.9, so that may have come up closer to 2. So that's roughly 2 and 2, even that gets you that roughly 500 record. So small incremental improvement, but I don't think that's enough to lock down this job. I think it's enough that he's a candidate. Luxon's a candidate, and we finally have started to see ripples and rumors of actual people that might be in for this thing as well. So none of them are something we can report because it's all ripples and backdoor talk. But that didn't exist 2 weeks ago, and it does now. So yeah,
I will share that I was told by somebody in the national media that. One of the known names out in the atmosphere of somebody that has MLS head coaching experience, as somehow, I'm not saying has been interviewed or has expressed interest. I don't know that level of it. I just know somehow they're in the mix at this point, which I thought was a bit surprising.
So I think what we said last week is true, that they're just waiting for the official elimination, and now they will open this up to other candidates, and you'll begin to see, because now it's fair. Remember I said that it wasn't fair to Peter Luxon that he walks out the training field and watches somebody walk into the building for an interview or hears about an interview. But now that they're eliminated, now it is fair. And so now you can open it up. I'm sure he will be a candidate. I'm almost guarantee you that he's a candidate. The team was better, but we know of multiple people that are also candidates. So
okay, so I get why you people see. This is the thing that drives me nuts. People keep saying the team was better. I'm not sure the team was better. The points per game number now, especially when you and this is the thing that sticks in my craw when people try to add up Luxane's time as manager and they throw out the US Open Cup game and the 2 Leagues Cup games because according to Dan Hunt and Andre Zanata, those were key elements to judging him as manager of this team. And when you throw those 3 losses in the mix, his record is pretty not that far off or that much better than Nico Esteves's were. Then I also want to ask this question specific to the game last night. What's he doing when he's subbing out Musa and Velasco when the game is tied 1-1 in a must-win game? Like, what is he thinking?
Yeah, I don't know how you sub off your 2 best players, your 2 best goal scorers. The only 2 players that are above like a 0.4 goals per 90 minutes. Both those guys are on 0.6 and 0.67 for Allen. Clearly your best 2 chances to score, and you sub them both out. So that's a question I don't have an answer to. The post-game stuff is just quotes from him. There's no quotes from players, so I couldn't even begin to tell you. That's a whole different question. Musa, by the way, walked straight into the locker room, and there's didn't go to the bench. It didn't look like
was he
they
hurt?
cut away. No, I don't think so. Let me read you the quote that Luxon had after that sub. Let me grab it real quick. Okay, this is Coach Peter Luxon after the game, responding to the Musa sub question. It's football. It's a state of emotion. I don't have a problem with that. In the end, they are winners and they want to do their best. And when the group isn't at their best, it's normal to be mad. He's a winner and that's it. It won't happen again, but I can understand the emotion of everybody right now. So clearly there was some discontent with that.
So what won't happen again? Him walking straight to the
locker room, I assume. There was no more clarification than that. So Luxon doesn't say specifically what it was. I took it as the camera cuts away before he actually is down the tunnel, but it looks like he's heading to the tunnel to me. Because when it was live, I was like, whoa, was he going down the tunnel? And then they cut away. So,
well, to me, the moment just feels like, I mean, I guess I can somewhat see a justification on subbing out Velasco because he's a kid coming back from an ACL injury. He played a lot of minutes, minute load thing. Mm-hmm. But to do both of them in that manner is really, really confusing. And it feels like that's an example of a guy that just doesn't have a lot of experience and maybe he's not reading the scenario correctly. And to be fair to him, maybe there's some subcontext that we're not aware of.
Totally.
That would justify making this move. But just based on what we do know, because the club isn't communicating anything to us or giving us other additional insight as to why it happened, it's a really, really bad look for a guy trying out for a job. And it screams inexperience to me and a really clear indicator of why maybe somebody like that isn't the right person for this job.
Well, if you want to take off Velasco for a minute, though, you just put in Farrington for him. It's simple. You don't have to bring off. Farrington doesn't have to be the high 9. He plays off, wing off all the time, especially because you have Jesus who wants to slide back anyway. So that would have been an easy adaptation for me. But to answer the question that you asked earlier about the team being better, when you combine it with the Musa sub question at the same time, is that under Luxon, Leggett has found himself again. Areola has improved dramatically. Jesus Ferreira has come back and started playing again. Ruan has been a good add and a nice piece. Shoke Kavumana has been a good add and a nice piece. So there's 5 or 6 qualities to the team that I think are clearly better and improved. Whether he gets credit for all those things or not is a different question, but I think the team is definitely better. It also is sacrificing a lot of defense for offense. That may not be better. That part, that's going to be what's going to cost them in the end.
I see. For me, I mean, I know everybody thinks the team's playing more entertaining, a more entertaining style, and I'm willing to say that. But at the end of the day, this is results based business.
It is,
and in that way, he didn't really produce any better results than Nico did. And I don't think look. In all of the games, I think he's up to 17 games total now. Does he have a signature win out of that group? I mean, maybe beating the Galaxy at home.
That was a pretty big win.
But that's a home game, right? I mean,
finally got the one road win. That was something.
I always against DC.
Well, when you have 0 road wins, if you finally get 1 road win, that's something.
Man, if that counts as a signature win, that's thin, man.
I'm not saying it's great. I'm
asking about
it's
signature win. I'm talking Oscar putting 5 homegrowns on the field in Columbus and getting a win, kind of signature win. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, I mean, that LA win was pretty good, but certainly nothing on the road.
Yeah,
the Galaxy one's pretty good.
So you see where I'm coming from.
Dan, is the team better for you? What do you think?
Define better.
Yeah.
That's my point.
So no, it's not better for you.
I mean, it's playing a more interesting style of soccer. That's really it. Yeah, I think attacking soccer is always more pleasing, but the results are important. And it's kind of tailed off a little bit from a pretty early promising start, which is a little bit of new coach bump and just teams trying to refeel out FC Dallas.
Well, Peter, the best I can come up with is 5-3 over Minnesota. And Minnesota's turned out to be decent over the back end of the season. And 3-1 over Austin. Those are the closest I can come up with. Other than the Galaxy game, is the marquee win. Your miles may vary.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. It's a terrible loss. It's a really crummy, weird way to lose a season. And I'm just in this season, in my mind, when this is all said and done, Buzz, I really feel like we're going to look back on this season and consider it to be the single most needlessly wasted season in this club's history. Like this season just feels like it was so obviously poised for something like this to happen from the very start. Do you remember how weirdly hesitant we all were back in January and February about how this thing was going down because of the way the roster was coming together?
Well, I think I remember quite clearly saying that it was going to be a wasted season because you didn't IRL in Velasco.
Yeah, well, it starts with that, right? Yes.
Yeah, and the fact that you proceeded to not get what I think most people outside the team clearly felt was your biggest deficiency, which was the center back. You don't get one of those. And then on top of that, you go play a back 3. So not only are you short 1 center back, you're actually short 2, which is incredible. And I think there's a gigantic problem with playing a back 3 in Texas, because you guys may not have noticed this. I certainly have. It is really hot here. And when you play wing backs, they have to run the whole field. Remember we spent the first part of the year talking about how the wing backs that he had weren't playing wing back. They were just playing the back part, and they weren't doing the wing part. And he finally got Rowan and Areola to do both parts of it. And those guys have an incredible burden of running that they have to do. And to me, that's a terrible idea in a place that has one of the hottest temperatures for average home temperatures in the world. That sounds awful. I don't know how you calculate that as the way to go about it. A back 3 system tends to be a very vertical, up and down, rapid system. Again, not something I'm sure plays well in the heat.
But isn't the choice to ultimately, because Luxane essentially stuck with the exact same system.
I know.
This is all a reflection of the crummy state of the roster, in that both these managers looked at what they had and said, man, if I don't put 3 center backs back there, we're gonna leak goals like a sieve. Or at least that's what they thought the solution was.
Yeah, they leak goals like a sieve anyway under Luxane.
Well, yeah, there's a way to play a 3-man back line, and there's a way not to play a 3-man back line, and Peter chose the latter.
Yeah, it's tough. At the beginning of the year, we were kind of all over the place, as you said, in terms of what we were predicting. I think we predicted anywhere from, 4th down to 9th, because we just couldn't get a handle on what they were doing and what the team was doing. And there's a lot of disparate pieces on this roster. And at the end of the day, any season where it goes bad enough that you end up firing the coach is a wasted season, because now when you're going to have a new coach, it doesn't matter who that coach is. You're starting a rebuild, right? You're starting about another cycle. This is not the kind of franchise where the cabinet is full and you're just looking for a guy to massage it into the dough into the shape for the bread. This is a team where you got to go back and start over from ground zero because of the way the roster's poorly put together. And at some point we'll do a thing trying to explain what we mean by that. That's a long conversation, probably has to be a post, but it's when you're now going to be starting over with a new guy and a new build and a new acquisition of players that play his way. And we talk about this with all teams. We talk about the biggest teams in the world. When the new coach comes in and 3 years later they're in the Champions League, it's not because that guy coached up the dudes that were there. It's because they spent $250 million. Now this club can't do that. So it has to do it in other ways. But you're going to see a fairly significant roster turnover because they'll be building for a new guy and a new way of playing. I guarantee you that even if it's Peter looks on, it will not be the same roster. It will not be the same guys playing the same way. It won't be. He was doing what he felt was best for this current roster. And given the fact that he was a large contributor into Nico Estevez's planning in his locker room, it's not surprising that the plan is pretty close to what it was, which is why, honestly, it's not particularly fair to expect massive changes from a guy that was one of the, if not the lead assistant, he was the number 2 assistant, so it's a weird state and it is a weird wasted season. And the whole idea of firing the guy mid-season because he was going to get him into the playoffs was to me is a bit disingenuous, to have done to the guy.
Yeah. And it's also probably not fair. I mean, look, this is going to sound harsh, but to the best of my knowledge, the top level Peter has managed a team at was U14 in the academy.
Yeah. As a head coach. Yeah.
And I realize he's been an assistant for a while, but man, I don't know. It's so frustrating. It is a weird situation to think that this season we all I thought it was going to be a dodgy season from the jump, but to find out that this season is going to end, and my perception is that Austin with Josh Wolf is absolute garbage, and Dallas is going to finish below them in the table. Like Dallas is the worst team in Texas right now, and that is unacceptable.
Well, I don't begrudge them letting Luxon have a shot. If he wanted the shot, I don't mind that because he was the highest ranking assistant they had left and they need an interim coach. And he's like, hey, give me the chance. And they're like, you know what? Okay. You've been our guy a long time. Fine. You get the shot. That doesn't mean you lock it in and give to him 100%. It just means of the people that were sitting around on the staff, who else would you have done? Keyshawn, maybe. John Gall was coaching North Texas. You could have done him, I guess. Maybe he had a little more head coaching experience, but not much more than Peters had way more assistant.
You could have kept MLS. Nico Esteves, who was under contract for the rest of the year, instead of paying him out to sit on his ass for 6 months.
You mean not fire him?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a good way to win the wooden spoon. Well, I guess not San Jose are that far back, but at least challenge for it.
Yeah, once you decide to fire the guy, you don't then let him sit around for 6 months. I can think of examples where that's happened, where they're like, okay, at the end of the season you're fired, but you can coach out the string.
Yeah, I'm not saying fire him and keep him. I'm saying let him just continue to keep the job till the end of the season. If you didn't have a plan to replace him, I mean, look, to be fair to Nico Esteves, Peter Luxon had some advantages that Nico didn't in the form of players. And what we don't know is how would have Nico reacted to having Velasco back and Jesus back and Alara Mendy back and now suddenly Rowan and Show available. I mean, that to me is the hardest and most damning part of Luxon's time, is that he had a significantly better roster to choose from that Nico Esteves did from his 16 games.
I think I tried to think about that a little bit, and I think that it is a little unfair to not have given him the second window to try and write it, which is why when they fired him they did, my thinking must have gone back to, this goes back to really middle of the previous year, right? Like since that Gold Cup that Jesus came back, not the same player. Since then, Nico Esteves' team has been terrible. So they probably came into this season on a short leash and we didn't know it, for them to have ripped him that fast. You know what I mean? Like at the halfway point.
Well, I think also the ghost of Lucci was in there. I think they probably thought they waited too long to fire Lucci. And maybe that was playing in the back of their mind.
Well, certainly they waited too long to give anyone else a chance post Lucci. At least this time, maybe they figured we'll give whoever it is an actual chance to get into the playoffs. I mean, they didn't really, but they kind of did.
Well, don't forget, we were talking about this really since April, that, he was circling the drain. He had the win over 10-man Houston, kind of extended it a little bit. The win against Austin, when I don't remember exactly what happened, but they were absolute dog shit. He then goes and takes a 3-0 lead against Real Salt Lake to only to throw it away. You get that 1-1 draw in Minnesota that was potentially the most boring game of football in history. No one was surprised it happened at the time. It's looking back now, it's kind of surprising it happened when it happened, but at the time, he was probably the most surprised person that he was fired.
Well, I will say that, like we heard at the time, maybe a month before he was actually fired, I heard from people very reliably that the Hunts were about to fire him and that several of the high-profile big-name players went to Dan and spoke on Nico's behalf. I took that to be, and these are, I don't know the names, these are pure guesses. People like Paul, presumably, maybe Leggett, maybe Armandi, maybe even like an Ibby, some players spoke up on his behalf that they liked him and they wanted to keep him and wanted him to stay. And that got him about a month furlough before they finally fired him anyway. So it was actually on the cards earlier than it happened.
Well, I don't think there's ever a really good way to fire a manager, with the exception of having a plan of what you're immediately going to do in the aftermath.
Right.
And if the plan was to let Peter take over and see what happens out of it, that doesn't feel like a plan to me. That feels, it just...
Well, the problem they've got, and this is MLS, this is the way the playoffs are, or the play-in game, or whatever you want to call it.
Stop.
You've got half season. You're coming up to the trade window. You have Luke San take over as interim coach. Let's say you give him 5 games to kind of get in while you sort contracts out with someone. They've then got to get used to the team themselves. They're not embedded in the system. They don't know the players that well. They're then going to try and put their stamp on it, figure out if it works or if it doesn't. We all remember Lucci's first preseason when he came in and was like, yeah, we're going to have this counter pressing style. It's going to be 90 minutes high pressing. And then all of preseason, he tried different shapes, different things, and then rolled around the first game of the season. And it was shit. You're ultimately surrendering any chance at the playoffs. Your best shot at the playoffs is try and have consistency and get some new energy in, which is what they tried. It hasn't worked, but is it better to bring in a new coach with the promise of, we're going to completely gut the roster anyway, but can you at least try and figure this out and maybe try and win 4 of your last 5 games to sneak in?
Yeah. The whole thing is disappointing and frustrating and a little bit soul-crushing, but it is what it is.
It's just another day for FC Dallas, isn't it?
You know what? Yeah, we've said it every year for the last 20, and this is the 29th season. There's always next year.
There's always 3 years from now.
Yes, and when you begin to think about 2025, and then you now throw in the stadium construction complications and whatever that is going to bring, the next 3 seasons of this club are really foggy, and that's the most polite way I can put it.
Yeah, I think you're right, Peter, that there's a certain caliber of coach that will look at that situation. Even if they called in the first place, they'll look at that situation and go, nope. Because, home field advantage is impacted by stadium atmosphere. If you have a stadium, you might not necessarily want to coach in that environment. Certain guys.
Yeah,
money might be affected. Budgets might be affected.
Well, clearly budgets are affected. I mean, the ticket prices. I mean, yeah, they're like the idea of suddenly losing half your ticket revenue, and adding whatever price of a new, high dollar manager that you've never paid for before just doesn't feel like the Clark Hunt bottom line business modus operandi that
Yeah,
we're
I
all
mean,
familiar with.
In a way, they're going to eat a stinky turd for 3 seasons, but hopefully it's going to be worth it on the back end. The venue might be worth it. Hopefully.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Better be.
I mean, are they gonna? Do you think they'll even try to go get Eric Quill?
I mean, I assume he'll be a candidate. I mean, it'll depend on what it'll take to get him out of his extended contract. You know, it just depends on.
Well, let me just say this.
Yeah.
If we're at a point, if this club is at a point that a USLC team can outspend an MLS team for its manager, we're in a really, really dark spot. We're in a way darker spot than I thought.
It'll depend on I can't remotely speak for how much Dan and Clark like Eric Quill. I think they like him quite a bit. I can't speak for how much that really is. Do they like him like Poppy, go pay Colorado a bunch of money to get him amount, or do they like him just a fair bit and whatever random XYZ candidates are close enough that, you know what, it's not worth $2 million to get Quill. That's a pure number I made up. I don't know what it is, to get Quill out of New Mexico. You know what I mean? So again, it's like, it'll depend a lot on who else is on the list. Do they like him significantly more than they like Peter Luxon? I couldn't tell you. I mean, I do, but that's not, it's easier for me to spend somebody else's money, isn't it?
Ultimately, they also have the problem of taking, to use a racing analogy, taking Ayrton Senna and putting him in one of those red little tykes cars that, toddlers have. Because that's it, right? You can have as good a coach as you want, but if the person assembling the roster is there to sell, not buy, what are they going to get?
Yeah, Dan, you're 100% dead on, which is at the end of the day, you could have had whatever manager this was. We've talked about it ad nauseum. We've beaten this dead horse into a pulp. The core of all of this was never about the manager. It was always about the poorly constructed roster and all of the risks they took and how all of those risks blew up in their face. And that's what really ruined this season. It wasn't Nico Estevez. It wasn't Peter Luxon. It was the roster construction. And Andre Zanata, who is responsible for that, who, again, it's funny. Last week after the game, Luxon, was in his press conference and, it's got hung out to dry. Like, where is Dan Hunt or Andre Zanata, like, speaking to the public at this point? Where are they? I don't understand this kind of weird naked cowardice. So that's the only word I can come up with, is just their refusal to get out in front of the media and talk about what's going on here and leaving their poor manager out to dry. I don't get it.
I imagine the next time you'll see them, it will be when they have a conference at the end of the season to announce whether Luxon is being retained or not, and whether they're going out to get other candidates or not. That'll be the next time I see them.
In fairness, when was the last time you saw an owner or a technical director speak at a coach's press conference after a game?
Well, I'm not even talking about being at the press conference. I'm talking about just speaking to the media, period. Like, after Luxon has to go through all of that after that press conference, where's Dan Hunt standing up for him or saying something about the current state of the club? Or Zanata? I mean, Zanata's even more of a ghost than Dan Hunt is. At least every once in a while, somebody in the media bumps into Dan somewhere and he, opens his yap.
Ironically, I did during that press conference. I mean, I think the
what did he say?
Oh, nothing. I wasn't talking to him about the game. I just bumped into him and said hello. The problem you get, and this is coming from England more than anything, is when a coach is struggling and the owner speaks, it's to give the dreaded vote of confidence. Yeah, we've given him his full support. He's the man for the job. That's not a good thing. That's bad pressure for the coach. It's sometimes just better to say nothing in that case.
I think we're partially used to Jerry Jones and Mark Cuban around here, who get in front of mics all the time.
But they're celebrities. They're not the Hunts and Zanata.
I know. My point is that they're not normal. They're normal for us here. they're not normal for most owners or GMs.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe my expectations are wrong. I'm willing to accept that maybe at thinking that Dan Hunt or Andre Zanata are willing to come out and address the fans and the media as to the current state of this club, and just leaving Luxane to do it on his own. Not necessarily in that moment, but even after the fact or beforehand or something, it just is. It's really, really weird to me.
The last time I thought we for sure should have heard from Zanata was when they added 2 players. We should have heard from him, about why those 2 players and why not other kinds of players. Why business in the window went like it went. You can look around the league and pretty much every technical director or GM around the league went out and spoke about why they did or didn't do what they did in the window.
In fairness, if I was working PR for FC Dallas, I would be like, yep, Andre does not speak to people unaccompanied. That could be damaging. At the stuff post Nico firing, he basically threw him under the bus and said, "Yeah, we have a great roster. It's perfect." Obviously, not the case, but
that's fair.
Yeah,
he does. It does more harm than good.
Yeah, and Dan will, and of course we all know Dan.
Talks in circles.
Well, and hyperbole, and says things and makes statements that lead people in a wrong direction. I mean, what was the one that he said about the new stadium? It's going to be the finest soccer facility in the world. It's like, come on, dude.
Well,
Nobody.
The best one was at the Cotton Bowl for that Miami friendly when he talked about, the defense is perfect. We don't need to pay any attention to it. What we need to do is have goal scorers.
I don't think it's any breaking news to tell everybody that Dan Hunt is not the classic soccer person. So,
or the classic, we're going to get reinforcements, and I mean like meaningful reinforcements.
Yeah,
and then they didn't sign a single player. So damage limitation.
Well, we'll see what happens for the rest of the season. I don't think it makes. I mean, I guess there's a scenario where they win these last 3 games and everybody in the mood changes a little bit, but I don't think that's going to happen. History tells us is there only 2 games left. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Portland.
Buzz, don't forget there's San Jose again.
San Jose this weekend. Right. Portland next Wednesday.
No. San Jose and Portland this weekend. They're on consecutive days.
Doubleheader.
But guys, we all know what happens in these situations when the door is shut and there is no hope. What happens in these final games, whether it's 1 game, 2 games, 3 games, 4 games, what always, well, not always, 99.9% of the time happens. What happens?
I don't know what happens.
Everybody just gives up. There's nothing to play for. Like, why
that happen on Wednesday?
Well, I think maybe it did. Maybe everybody had already given up at that point, and I think that's even probably more of a problem. But once the door is officially shut, and you can't go anywhere, and it's not just soccer. This happens in every sport. When your team is done, the season's done, players play like they're done. They don't want to get hurt. They don't want to risk their, especially the ones that are out of contract, So,
well, here's the odd balance of that is Luxon's probably still trying to prove that he's the guy.
I know
he's not going to play kids or go out there and lollygagging around. He's going to play for wins.
But isn't that what you and me and Dan and the fans probably want now is start Nolan Norris, throw Antonio Carrera in goal, get us one of these, who's the badass running around in the midfield for North Texas that you like so much, Buzz? Let him play a little bit. Come on.
Nolan's probably not going to be here, but specifics aside, yes, that's what we would all want. But if Luxane needs to be able to point to his record, he's going to want to win these 2 games. He's going to want to leave a look at us blowing people out or something like that on the table as the last 2. He doesn't want to lose these 2 games and then roll in, 0-4 after beating LAFC, roll in 0-4. He's going to want to get some points. So he ain't going to play kids. No way.
No. Okay.
He's going to go for it, don't you think? I think he's going to go for it.
Well, yes, no, I do think that's what he's going to do, but you and I both know that's probably,
He wants to finish ahead of Austin. He wants to get the margin to Portland, as tight as possible. If you beat them, that's a 6-point game. You want to get it to where they beat you by 1 point. So you can go, look, I was 1 point out of the playoffs. If Nico would have won a game, I'd have been in.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you want a positive goal difference. You want to get your goals scored and goals allowed in the right directions. Like, no way is he rolling over and playing kids. I don't think.
No, you're probably right, but
Yeah.
that's not what I wanted to hear.
Sorry, Peter. I'm sorry to pile on to your day. My apologies.
Why make my life worse, Buzz? I want something to go right
Peter,
today.
you need corgi time. You need corgi time, don't you?
Man, I do need corgi time.
Yeah.
All right, so and then this is the most curious part of this entire story, which is in the midst of FC Dallas having one of their worst seasons in club history, their little second team is having another amazing season, is in first place, qualified as the first seed. They get all their home games. And North Texas is actually really good, Buzz tells me.
Oh, they're fantastic. Well, look, part of the reason they're fantastic is related to what Nico Estevez did with the first team roster, which is he had a bunch of old guys taking up all the spots where you would normally have some homegrowns and some younger, project type players. Those guys are all down at North Texas instead. Even guys that are like full signed contract players that just need minutes, that might pop down for a game or two are now down there permanently. So John Gall did a great job building that team over the first 2/3 of the season. Michel has done really well, just continuing what he was doing down there. John Gall was doing, and Michel was just named coach of the month. So that team's really good. There's, they arguably have at that level, they have 4 starting center backs for 3 spots. So they do some rotation in that regard. When Nolan's around, he's great as a holding mid with Carl Sante, who can play center back or holding mid, is a first team contract. They got Endele on the outside, who's on the right, who's a first team contract player, is playing down there. They've got Thomas Pondeca's down there a lot. They got Pedrinho, who's leading the team in assists. The Brazilian kid is finally fully healthy again and looks really good. My favorite, Diego Garcia, who I can't believe is actually not signed already. Tarek Scott's their leading scorer, who you guys have already seen with the first team. So that team is loaded for an MLS Next Pro team. We don't always see them like that. It's more like Quill's title-winning team back in the very first season, where there's a bunch of really good talent there. So they have now clinched home field advantage through the entire playoffs. So if they run the whole thing, the MLS Next Cup, Next Pro Cup will be here in Arlington for the championship. So they're going to have a legit shot to win it. And they were thinking about that because they did this weird-ass crap where Logan Farrington showed up at North Texas games for like a month and a half and didn't play. He was just on the bench on the roster.
Qualifies?
Yeah, they put him on the bench on the roster for enough games that he qualifies for the playoff roster. So they can, if Dallas is eliminated, and say today,
which they are,
and that North Texas has one more home game and then they go into the playoffs. Why not put Logan Farrington? Not that you don't have already good strikers, but if you can put Logan Farrington down there, go for a championship, get some silverware, right?
I'm going to guess just off the top of my head, Logan Farrington is a step up in anybody starting for North Texas right now.
Well, they usually play either Tark Scott or Pedrinho as a 9. Neither one of them are pure 9s. But if you put Logan down there, then you can end up with Pedrinho and Tark Scott as your wings. And you have those guys as your wing instead of 2 17-year-olds as your wings, which is what they've been doing lately. Not that those 17-year-olds aren't great. So it's like, it's if you're trying to stack a team to make a run, you've put yourselves in position to do that. I mean, I thought that was actually quite clever on their part to make Farrington eligible. It's a guy that could use more game. It's not like you've overworked him into the ground. He's a prolific player. He's an exciting player. It'd be good for him.
So I saw that Michel was named Next Pro Coach of the Month, but he's not the coach of the team.
He's the interim head coach. He is.
I thought Gall was.
John Gall's Luxane's first assistant.
Oh, that's right. They moved Gall up to the senior team. That's right. Okay. Thank you.
If you remember when Luxane got the job, they said, who do you want as assistant? He said the first name he said was John Gall.
Yes. Okay.
So they asked John if he would do it, and John jumped at the chance to be a MLS assistant. So
all right.
Michel has been the head coach. Somebody today asked me if Michel, coach of the month, would Michel have a chance to be up for the FC Dallas job? And I was like, no. He's been a head coach for like a month and a half. No, I mean, he has a B license, but other than that, he's only coached 4-0. He's not. If you want to take a name from that group that you might make a consideration from, it would be Gall, who at least has been a head coach for a long, long time at many levels. But even Gall, I would not put in at that level yet. He has only half a season at Next Pro and Business Academy guys. So.
I'm totally derailing this, but somebody asked me the question the other day: does Luxane even have the required coaching licenses?
I believe he has a UEFA license.
Oh, okay.
I remember looking it up, and I remember being like, "Oh, a UEFA license." I'm pretty sure. I don't have it in front of me, but
okay,
you could Google it real quick. I'm sure that's what.
I don't really care enough to Google.
I'm sure he has at least a UEFA B, if not UEFA A.
Yeah, he's doing his UEFA A.
Okay,
or he's been doing it. He had the B already.
A lot of people don't know this, but like if you play a certain number of games at a professional level, of a certain quality professional,
you qualify
level,
for
then,
a light.
Well, you get to start at B. You get to go right into the B course, and Major League Soccer, in fact, will facilitate those courses for players. Like Jimmy's doing he did an academy course, and now he's doing his. He did a UEFA course, and now he's doing something else. So, like, there have been many coaches, like Jason did the A course when he was still a player. Deering did the B course, I think, when he was a player. Many guys will the league will facilitate it, and that you can do it so that, like, when you're done playing, you're ready to retire, you already have the B or the A, and you can go right into doing what you need to do. Like, I remember when I first talked to Michel, when he first was coaching, he had not done that. So he didn't have any licenses at the time, I don't think, which is why he was working for Foro and not the academy. And why he jumped at a chance to get on with North Texas, and be their assistant. So I hope I have that story right. I hope I'm not confusing that with somebody else. But
all right, let's move on to the Dan Crooke portion of the podcast, because we're going to talk about the ladies. First off, Dallas Trinity.
Hey, ladies.
Had some good news. Wow. Dan?
They did. They had a couple of good bits of news. 3 of the amateur roster players were named to the US Under-17 Women's World Cup team. The DFW area had 6 players in total, which equals the state of California as the largest producer of talent on that 21-player roster.
Wait, so Dallas DFW alone had as many players on the roster as the entire state of California.
Yep,
that's tremendous. That's awesome.
So nearly a third of the roster comes from our little part of the world.
And 3 of them are the amateur players that play for Trinity.
Yeah, so Evan Osteen, goalkeeper, she played in the game against Barcelona. Solar Kid, she's now 7, I believe. You've got, who else we got? Jordan Hardiman, who's been fantastic at centre-back for Trinity, another Solar Kid. You've also got Kiara Gilmore, an FC Dallas Academy kid, who's at Trinity. She hasn't played for them yet, but I'm sure with the number of injuries they get, that chance will come. And then elsewhere, you've got Trinity Armstrong, who is one of 4 players to play NCAA soccer right now. She has started every single game for UNC as a centre-back, which is kind of impressive. 12 games, and I think they've kept 7 clean sheets in that time. And then the 2 NWSL players from the area, Kennedy Fuller at Angel City FC and Ainsley McCammon at Seattle Reign, both made the roster too. Kennedy Fuller is actually the leading scorer. She has like 9 goals in 8 games, amazingly.
Well, and they had that one game postponed because of the hurricane. When's their next game?
The 6th, I believe.
Okay.
And supposedly they're not playing that friendly the penultimate day of the state fair anymore.
Oh, really? I wonder why not.
No idea.
It popped up and then it vanished, so it's hard to really know what happened. It was on the schedule for a bit and then it went away.
All right. Well,
what was the other news, Dan?
The other thing was that they again had 2 players named to the team of the month, Amber Brooks and I nearly said Amber Heard. That would have been weird. Yeah, Amber Brooks and Chioma Ubogagu, both named as centre midfielders in the 4-4-2 that they so nicely put up, which was odd.
One of those was a weird choice, but okay.
Yeah, well, she was put as a centre mid last time as well. She plays left wing.
Weird.
Chioma Ubogagu got the first multi-goal game in league history with that brace against Lexington before Christ, I'm bad with names today.
Ali Thornton.
That was it. So I'm trying to do this off the top of my head. Before Ali Thornton scored a hat trick, she is named to the bench for that team in a month. And also from the area, Addie McCain, who was, I think she came for FC Dallas. She definitely played WPSL. She's at Fort Lauderdale United now. She was named as one of the strikers in the team of the month.
All right. Well, good stuff. Well, I don't know how well I did in trying not to be the dark cloud of doom about Dallas, but I tried, guys.
Why?
I appreciate your attempt, Peter.
Because I said from the beginning, I'm trying not to just default to that. But you know, it is what it is, Dan. Come on.
You're a little fired up about the season ticket kerfuffle. I'll give you that.
Well, look, the Charlie thing really, that really broke my heart. I think that's terrible. I mean, look, the idea that you and Charlie are priced out of buying tickets is the seemingly is like a Rubicon that this. I mean, if in fact this club has crossed the Rubicon that you and Charlie are priced out of buying tickets, the soul of this club is gone.
Well, to be fair, mine wasn't only price, but my ticket was going up $300. So I would have been, that probably would have killed it, even if I hadn't already been getting out for some other reasons. But
yeah, well,
to see Charlie suffering is
that's mental. I mean, who doesn't see her in the chair along the West Concourse? Or, I mean, it used to be a case of like racing after Fernando Clavillo, trying to chase him down to have a chat with him. She'd come out to practice half the time I was there, like that.
Charlie.
Really
Charlie would meet players at the airport. Charlie would befriend players' families. Does. I mean, there is not a bigger, more dedicated, more true fan of this club than Charlie Helms, and that it just blows my mind. And maybe that's what this thing is destined for. Maybe this thing's destined for a whole new generation of fans, and this old ones of us are just kind of left behind. Maybe that's what it is.
Don't kid yourself. Lamar Hunt invested into soccer because he thought it could be the NFL 2.0. It's like the Hunt expectations is that this is going to be the Chiefs. So that's the goal. That's the target. That's what they want it to be. Yeah. And so whatever you feel about NFL fandom and the availability of the NFL teams to fans, that's what it's going to be if they get the target that they think they're going to hit.
Well, I just want to remind everybody that prior to this amazing Taylor Swift thing that's going on with the Chiefs and the Super Bowls, that organization went 50 years without winning squat. So buckle up, kids.
It's better than not having a team, though, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so I'm all right.
We got a team. You got Dallas Trinity.
Yeah, fair. I mean, for how long?
Well, that's a different story and another podcast.
Yeah, if you're only going to draw 2,000, it ain't going to last that long.
Oh, man. Sorry, now I've infected Buzz.
Yeah. Hey, I'm a realist, dude. Cynic, you know that.
All right, boys. Anything else before we go?
I feel like there should be something.
What?
I don't know. I'm going to go out and I'm going to bold limb, and I'm going to predict that Nolan Norris is going to be in the next U20 team that's going to have a camp in early October, which is why I was saying that I don't know that he'll be around for those last two games.
Okay. Well, good luck to Nolan. I hope that goes well. Dan, you got anything else?
Nah. Let's just end it on a sour note.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, thank you to you both, and thank you. And my love and support to all of you FC Dallas curious out there. I know these times are tough. What I would tell you, I think Buzz would concur with this, is people that have been around for this thing since day one. This is one of the weirder, worse endings to a season. All the endings to all the seasons have been bad for one reason or another. This one is just like the end of a sucky season in a different way that maybe isn't fun. But it will get better from here somehow, I think. I'm really trying to end on a positive note, but I don't think I'm doing a good job. So sorry. All right. We will speak to you next week. I don't know what we're going to talk about. We'll try to find something good. And I hope everybody has a great weekend. And we'll talk to you then on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
The miserable bastards.